In my last video titled PMO Spiritual Warfare Number One, I began to introduce to those who are listening to these videos on the subject of PMO that in the context of doing PMO from the beginning all the way through to the end of doing a particular incident of PMO, that there's really spiritual warfare taking place. And what I'd like to do in these subsequent videos, starting with today and 5 other videos following this, is I would like to try to persuade you that when a man, we'll say a man in this case, when a man is engaged in the matter of PMO, that the kingdom of darkness, the devil, his principalities and powers and authorities and rulers in the kingdom of darkness are very actively involved with the man who is doing PMO. Or putting it in another way, that when a man is doing PMO in the beginning, in the middle, and the end, that the powers of darkness, the principalities and powers and the rulers in the heavenly places, Satan's cohorts, are simultaneously very much present in trying to influence and coerce that particular man who is doing PMO. I would hope by the end of this series that the man who struggles with PMO would understand very, very deeply that when he's doing that, the kingdom of darkness is impressing upon him and trying to influence him and persuade him to do PMO. I've come up with 5 ways in which the devil is involved in this matter of PMO, and I'd like to look at one of those today. Okay, so let's start in the beginning. You have a man who is a single guy. He's at work. He works by himself. He's being quarantined, perhaps, and he's in front of his computer and he's taking a break and he's scrolling through the computer looking for just ads and perhaps sports and things like that. And a pop-up shows up of a woman in lingerie, or perhaps a large-breasted women in a bathing suit, which is not uncommon to see pop up these days. And so that's the beginning for this young man who happens to be single, this is the beginning of temptation. How about for another man who is married, is a married man, he's laying in bed at night and he's anxious. He's anxious about the next day's presentation that he's got to give to his fellow employees, and he's anxious about it, he's nervous about it. And it dawns upon him, he becomes under temptation, and he begins to think about, that perhaps he'll go down to the computer in his study, and perhaps he will begin to browse and do PMO. So what's the beginning of this for the single guy and for the married guy? Let's take this temptation, break it apart, and ask a couple very fundamental questions that we need some very good answers for. Okay. Well, both of these men, both the single man and the married man, are coming under temptation. Now, what is temptation? One way that we can explain temptation is we can call it bait. You know, when you go fishing, you take bait, a lure, a worm, or some kind of a fish or something, and you put it on the end of the hook, and you throw it out into the lake, into the river, or into the ocean, and now it's bait. It's bait, B-A-I-T. Well, bait is something that catches the fish's, in this case, the fish's attention. He sees the bait, it's attractive to him, it's desirable for him, he's hungry, and that bait is seductive, and it lures the fish toward the direction of the bait, and he's dragged he's lured, fishing term by the way, in the direction of nibbling on that bait. He's seduced by that bait, so he goes in the direction, he's lured, he's seduced, and he begins to nibble on that bait because he's hungry, he sees a source of food, and he's being seduced and lured by that bait to nibble on the bait. Now, that's a fish, but what's that look like in the life of the single guy or a single man? Here's what the bait is for a single guy or for a married guy who's in the beginning throes of temptation toward PMO. What's the bait? Well, number one is the the woman who is in the bathing suit certainly is desirable to that particular man. A man is going to be desiring that picture. That is an attractive woman. That is an attractive picture, and he's going to be seduced to do more than just look at that particular person. So there's a picture of an attractive woman, perhaps in a bathing suit, or perhaps uh, uh, a nude woman who is presented to in a mind's eye of the man. That's number one. That one way, that's bait. That's dangling out in front of him is this image or this picture or this mental picture of an attractive woman who is perhaps naked. That's bait. That is clearly bait for a single man and for a married man. Another part of the bait that PMO is involved with that is this. The man begins to think about and ponder and desire to experience the orgasmic pleasure that the orgasm brings a particular man when he is engaged in PMO. Or in other words, the orgasmic experience is a very unique experience, it's an extremely pleasurable experience, and that's the bait that draws the attention of the man. He's laying in bed or he's in front of the computer, and he's thinking about the fact that I would like to have this orgasmic experience that's so powerful and so delightful, and that's bait for that single man as he thinks about that orgasmic pleasure that he's going to experience if he follows through past the temptation and moves in a direction toward the masturbation and the orgasm. So there's the attractive woman that's bait. There's the pondering of the orgasmic pleasure that is bait. And a third piece of bait that tempts men in these situations is the wanting and the craving and the desiring for the relief and the relief that comes when a man does have an orgasm. It's not uncommon for a man to have an orgasmic experience because he wants to be done with the anxiety, and an orgasm will push out the anxiety and it will bring him a sense of relief that is very attractive, it's very desirable, and it's very seductive. But those three forms are bait. The naked woman, the desire for that orgasmic extreme pleasure that comes with the orgasm, and the relief that comes with the orgasmic experience is all the bait that is seducing the man to follow through and go through past the temptation toward the direction of committing now masturbation and orgasm. Okay, one other thing about that particular bait. The bait is a lure to the fish. The fish is lured in the direction of the bait, and so is the man who is tempted by this naked woman or by this idea of having this pleasure or the idea of entering into a very sedated sense of relief that comes post orgasmic. But something else is happening. The bait is luring and it drags the fish. The fish, seeing the bait, is dragged and enticed in the direction of the bait. And similarly, a man who is looking at the naked woman, looking at the bait, of the orgasmic experience, or looking at the bait of the orgasmic relief that's going to follow the orgasm, he too is dragged and enticed in the direction of nibbling on that bait, eating that bait, and doing PMO. But where's this temptation? Where's this bait come from? It comes from three different sources, and it's important for us to understand where this bait of the orgasmic pleasure that he's thinking about, the naked woman that's drawing him toward doing masturbation orgasm, and as he ponders the bait of the sexual relief that he's going to get, the emotional relief that's going to come from the sexual orgasm. Where's this come from? Where does the bait come from? We need to understand that. It comes from three different places. Number one, in James chapter 1, James is very clear and very helpful to us when he says this: when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when by his own evil desire he is dragged away and enticed. So this bait, the origin and the source of the being drawn toward the bait is his own evil desire. And so the temptation, place number one where this bait resides is in his own evil desires. His own evil desires conjure up this bait of this pleasure or this relief, cooperating by looking at this naked woman. First of all, so he's got to take ownership to this bait and the desire and enticement and luring that is dragging him in the direction of now masturbation and orgasm. So the bait, where's the bait come from? Number one, it comes from within his own evil desires. Number two, the second place that this bait comes from is from the devil, or from one of the devil's cohorts or ministering spirits, evil spirits, principalities and powers and rulers in the heavenly places, in the dark realms. Or let's just title the whole concept that, let's just call that Satan. Satan has the ability to dangle this hook of the pleasure that comes from the orgasmic experience, or the relief that comes from the orgasmic experience. He is able to dangle that in front of the man. The man now sees that because the devil is laying it out there before him. And so there he is. Remember now, the Bible says that the devil is called the Tempter. What's that mean? It means that the devil has the ability and the power and the resources to dangle that bait of the orgasmic experience and pleasure, or the relief that comes from that orgasmic relief and pleasure, or the means of the naked woman that seduces him to do both the orgasmic and enter into that relief. Satan has the ability to dangle that bait in front of you, the man who is doing PMO. It simply doesn't come from you. It comes also from the tempter. The tempter has the ability to present you with the bait. He does it all the time. He's very successful in doing it. If you've been doing PMO for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, then you know that this is the beginning of PMO, and that is, there is the bait. You see the naked woman. You want to experience that pleasure. You want to experience that relief. There's the bait. Without the bait, it wouldn't be a problem, but there's the bait. And where's the bait come from? The bait comes from your own evil desires, but more importantly, for our purposes, it comes from the tempter, who from the outside now is able to lure you by that suggestion of that pleasure, or the thoughts and the suggestion of that relief that you're going to be able to experience after you've had that orgasmic experience. The devil is the tempter. When you are being tempted, the tempter is present. He is close, and he's laying out the bait before you because he wants to lure you in the direction of nibbling on that bait. Because behind the bait is a hook, and we're going to get to that in a later video. But he is called the tempter for a very good reason, because he has the ability to bait us with the naked woman that you see, with the wanting and the desiring of that orgasmic experience, and also entering into the relief that comes post-orgasmic experience. He's the tempter. This is what he did with Jesus. He tempted Jesus with the bait. Jesus resisted that and opposed the devil, and the devil ended up fleeing from him. But surely as the devil laid out bait, 3 ways, 3 pieces of bait for Jesus, luring him and seducing him to nibble on that bait, Jesus opposed him and had the spiritual warfare tools to oppose the devil and to defeat the devil as well. And the Lord is going to give us those tools as well. But as I said in the beginning, when you're doing PMO, that the devil is very actively involved in your life when you are in the PMO temptation, And we've seen number one way that he is the tempter. He has the ability to dangle the bait of orgasmic pleasure and orgasmic relief that is so pleasing and so attractive to the man who is doing PMO. So, is the devil involved in this PMO matter? He very definitely is. In the beginning, when he dangles that bait before you and is trying to lure and seduce you and drag you in the direction of nibbling and chewing on that bait so that he can defeat and discourage you as well. Okay, is the devil involved? Yes. Number one, he's involved because he is the tempter. And every time that you see that bait, you have to know that he's involved in dangling that bait in front of you. Okay, that's number one. In our next video, which will be titled number 3, we're going to look at the second way in which the devil is very actively involved in the man who is doing PMO. Look forward to sharing that with you soon.